Hello, hello. Where's my meeting? Oh, where's my meeting? Hello, can you hear me? Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, good. Hello, Kent, welcome.
I had to accept the recording before I could unmute myself.
Yeah. Oh, really? I hope we all don't have to accept the recording.
Yeah, I think you do. I think it always pops up on your screen.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't care if people record, but I don't want everybody to have to take the time to say, yes, I accept. Good morning, Kent.
Well, good morning. How are you this morning?
Good. How are you?
Well, I'm in Spanish Fort trying to get to a meeting in Salt Lake.
Oh, no. Good luck.
Well,
Well, we're glad you're with us today.
thank you. How's all the world of Chamber of Commerce? Are you finding success?
Yes, we're great. Rural Utah chambers are great. And we've got a conference coming up, not our conference, but we have a conference coming up that we all get to meet up in about a month or so. So that's exciting. One Utah Summit.
And also you guys have had a presence at the Energy Summit as well, haven't you?
I didn't go up there, but some people probably have. So I'm hoping that would be a great summit.
Well, I'm planning on being at both.
Oh, great.
Well-
Well, I'm excited to meet you in person. We actually do have a breakout session, just rural Utah chambers on Monday. So if you can make it to that, we'll have to invite you to that. You can come say hi in person to all of us.
That's at the one summit.
Yep.
Okay.
Good morning, Kyle. Abby, I'm going to make you a co-host so you can help me let people in the room.
Maybe I should unmute myself.
Great. And I've made you a co-host, Megan. Good morning, Grace. Good morning, Melissa.
Melissa, hello. How are you, dear?
I'm really great. I'm recovering from Shop Fest and
I was gonna say, what fabulous things are you doing up there?
oh, we're expanding again. I just took on another 1,100 square feet, so and it's
That's a
already
lot.
filled with incubator businesses. So now I have a wait list. I just got it approved on Wednesday and it's already full.
Yay.
Wow. So how much total space do you have?
With this we'll have 4,700 square feet.
Oh, that's crazy.
It is crazy. That is exactly what I tell myself every morning when I wake up. Oh, you're crazy. Yeah.
That's
Is
a
that all
lot.
incubator business, Melissa?
It's a bunch of different things. So we have like a whole business resource center. So we have 2 different computer labs. We have we'll have additional conference rooms. We'll have 2 classroom spaces now that I'm opening up these other ones. And then there's a bunch of incubator business office rentals. And then I'm really going to have a cool kind of like co-working space. So if somebody just wants a dedicated desk or if they just want to come and work 1 day a week in office so that they could work with other people or meet with clients.
Is
So
the chamber running that program, that building?
yes, this is the chamber. It's all chamber stuff.
Wow.
So
And I
you
just-
need to host like a chamber RUCC day, come
Yeah.
let us tour it because we
Absolutely.
love to get ideas on how to run a successful one.
I
Yeah,
would
we-
love that. And the other thing that I would do too is we should set up all the camera equipment and we could have all of our RUCC people take new executive headshots. You guys could all film
Oh,
a commercial and do some of the editing stuff for your own chamber. We could make a real cool day of it. So
let's do it.
I call for a field trip.
Still trip to Eagle Mountain. I love it.
yes, love it.
That sounds like so much fun.
That's
But no,
great.
really, Melissa, we'll have to plan that.
That would be cool. Yeah, I would love
That
that.
really would be cool. Okay, I'm really down for that. That's
Well,
really
if we had a hotel, I would totally have a conference over here because I'm claiming we're still rural because of Cedar Fort.
Yeah.
So until you guys kick me out, I'm gonna keep coming.
I love it.
By the way, I love all you guys. I love this collaboration. I think you're so awesome.
Aw.
Thank
Hey,
you,
Holly.
Holly.
fun. We're fun.
Well, I always
Alright.
say one of the things that makes this organization great is all our government liaisons and how supportive they are. So thank you guys for being here.
Absolutely.
Let's get started.
Let's do. Okay, welcome. We're so glad you guys are here. Thank you for taking your Friday morning to be with us. I just had a couple things I wanted to go over real quick. We do have 2 One Utah Summit tickets left. Those are complimentary, and we have a few accommodations left. Those are complimentary. So please, rural chambers, if you want to come down and haven't booked your ticket yet, please let us know. We would love to host you. So, and you can just send an email to info@ruralutahcc.org. Abby, will you put that in the chat, info@ruralutahcc, if you are wanting to take one of those tickets and the accommodations. So, but also a couple things to go over for One Utah Summit real quick, and I put these all in the chat. So next month, instead of a meeting like this, we will be meeting in person. It's still the second week like normal, but yes. Did you raise your hand, Abby?
Wait, oh, no, sorry. I was just typing and going, yes, I accomplished that goal.
Okay. So we will be meeting on Monday from 2 to 3 at One Utah Summit. And I put the room we'll be meeting in the chat. We'll also put it in the newsletter, but as soon as I hear of something I want to get it in my calendar. So in case you wanted to do that, that is there. And then instead of us having our own little private dinner party, which are always fun, but we are super excited we're going to go with all of One Utah Summit to the BZI dinner. So they're a fantastic company down south. They're having a big party out in their location, and they're going to shuttle us all out there. So yeah, can you guys see that BZI dinner invite? So would love to have everybody join that. In fact, if you see us, let's all try together and get on the same shuttle, because of course that would be the party bus and it would be so much fun. But
Yeah,
so our dinner party, instead of having it private, will be with all of One Utah Summit. So we're excited about that. I need to get back into my Zoom. There we go. Okay, so that's what we'll do for our dinner party. And then the last thing is Future Ready Leadership Day at One Utah Summit. It's actually a free day, and we highly encourage you to invite all your businesses. It's worth the drive down to Cedar City. It's a free day. We're going to have fantastic speakers. It's a full day and it's free. And so I put in the chat the link to that also. And then again, we'll put that flyer in our newsletter. So 3 things: our chamber meeting will be our breakout. Our Rural Utah Chamber meeting will be our breakout. Governor Cox and Lieutenant Governor will both be in that breakout session at the end with us. So please come to that. We'll be joining BZI for the dinner party, and the Future Ready Leadership Day. We encourage you all to invite your businesses. Okay, and that is all I have. And we're going to turn the time over to Abby to go over just some calendar items real quick.
There's just a couple things. So the Utah Rising webinar, if you guys want to get on that, that's the Salt Lake Chamber is fronting that, and that's what Chris McCormick is kind of heading that up. Chris, did I see you're on this call here?
Yes, I'm on the call.
Yeah, okay. So Chris is heading that up, and he's one of our founders of the RUCC here. So Chris, you want to just quickly talk about what Utah Rising is and how it's important for chambers to be a part of that?
Absolutely. So Utah Rising is a collaborative effort throughout the entire state with chambers of commerce to help develop a strategic plan for each community in the state. One of the things that we see happening over and over is that community starts to grow and things start to happen, and then they start having some challenges. And so we're trying to be more intentional about our designs, our future, our plans, and how we grow so that we have the kind of future that we want in our communities. We have the kind of industries we want in our communities. And we're working together to help lift each community throughout the state. So I think it's something that you all would be very thrilled to be involved with. There'll be a lot of tools and resources available to help you. And we invite everybody to join us in this effort.
Perfect, thank you. And then also we've got the Utah Tourism Conference. is in a little bit of a week and a half. So I know some of y'all are doing both chambers and sometimes tourism. So make sure y'all attend that if you're a part of it. And then there's some other things going on. The Uinta Basin Energy Summit is out in Vernal. And then, I've got the Utah Tourism Conference on there twice there. And then again, the One Utah Summit, Utah Rising webinar, and then make sure you put on your calendar for things coming up, the What's Up Down South Economic Summit in St. George, and then the Rural Utah Data Symposium in St. George, and then the Utah Association of Chambers Winter Conference in February. So we'll have more information when we get that about those. So that's it.
Thank you. And now we're going to turn the time over to Joel to introduce our government liaison this month.
Thanks, Tricia. Just one other calendar item I want to mention. Representative Curtis puts on an annual economic development summit down in Carbon County, and that will be held this Monday. So if you're in the Carbon County area, Price area, we'd highly encourage you to attend that. Representative Curtis does a phenomenal job in putting that on there at the campus in Price for USU. It's my pleasure to introduce Kent Wilson to us today. He's going to give us our government update. Kent Wilson comes from Emery County. He is the Eastern Utah Director for Senator Mitt Romney. And so I'll turn some time over to Kent now to give his brief update on the government side with what Senator Romney's working on.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the invitation. Like you said, my name's Kent Wilson. A little bit about myself. I've been in business for about 50 years, and so I'm a past chamber president of the Emery County Chamber of Commerce, and grateful to be a part of a Chamber of Commerce. I think your work is very important, and your local leaders need your input on local issues. You know, an example of that is affordable housing. Everywhere in the state of Utah is struggling with that, and our chamber is starting to lead out on that, and I'm hoping you are as well. About Senator Romney, I've been with him for about 2 years, and he's just finishing up his term. One of the things that we've been busy is we've created an amicus brief for the Uinta Rail project, as it did other federal officials. We're excited. I'm really excited about the state of Utah. They're really engaged with federal issues. As you talk with PLIPCO, they have over 70 lawsuits against the federal government. And to me, that's important. Nonprofits and SUA and those types have been trying to make a difference in federal legislation through lawsuits for decades. And the state of Utah is catching up. And there's a lot of areas that we can do some good. Senator Romney, when he come into office, the committees that he is on, and they are the Foreign Relations Committee and the Help Committee. And he had high hopes of, number one, he wanted to help solve Social Security issues. If nothing is done with Social Security in the next 10 years, there's not going to be enough money in the fund to take care of the claims that are going to be present. I've heard anywhere between 75, if I were to get on Social Security, I would only get 75 to 85% of my retirement the way it's structured now. So there's some work that needs to be done, but sadly the timing's not right. There are not many in Congress or the Senate that have the same sense of urgency that Senator Romney has. Another area that he had high hopes for on the Foreign Relations Committee is 50 years ago, America, we produced about 50% of the products in the world. Today, we produce about 17% of the products in the world. And so the world is changing and our power structure is changing. And the senator feels it's important that we help the fledgling democracies out in the world to survive, the Ukraines and Taiwans and others. He feels that in the next 30 years, if we don't support them today, 30 years from now, America will be fighting the fight alone. And so those are some of the things that have been important to him. that he's tried to make a difference to get America to face its obstacles that are in the distant future. As I talked to Senator Romney, I asked him, what are you going to do in the future? And because I was concerned that he was going to disengage and just retire, but there's two things that he mentioned that he wanted to work on. And one is he wanted to teach at universities. And he mentioned the University of Utah and he mentioned BYU. He wants to educate our youth in political dialogue. Another goal that he has is he feels like in election years like this, that the political center of both parties are not being heard, that the fringes, the dialogue is carried out by fringe politics. And so he'd like to empower the center of both parties, especially in election years, to where they can be more engaged in the process and be heard. And so hopefully as Senator Romney goes forward, you'll see more of him in that arena. Maybe just some other issues that excite me. I was at a UAC conference yesterday, and there was talk about UAC, which is Utah Association of Counties, is creating a nonprofit to help counties deal with affordable housing. And so talk to if that's an issue in your counties, talk to your county commissioners and team up with UAC and see how you could solve that problem in your area. Another issue is centrally assessed. The legislature is wanting to revamp and de-risk centrally assessed. In my little community, over the last 3 years, a modest home of what used to be 100,000 is now 200,000, and the taxes have went from $800 a year to $2,200 a year, and that's because of the problems with centrally assessed. And so, for you other energy counties out there, hopefully you're faring better than Emery County is. But the state is hoping to de-risk it to where we don't have those kinds of problems in the future. So maybe ask your local leadership to be a part of that conversation, and you might can direct the outcome of that bill. In your local areas, BLM is hot and heavy in travel management plans. So make sure your citizens are engaged and make comments, because a lot of travel management plans are going to be solidified in a year or two. And if Democrats stay in control, that means we have a lot of work to do to watch. Two other issues. One is the Colorado River. You hear about that a lot in the news. And there's be a lot of work to be done between states and federal government to make sure that Utah and the upper basins are that we have our water we need for future growth. The last one that I wanted to touch on is artificial intelligence. It's an interesting dynamic. The power they're going to need, they say in the state of Utah, over the next 10 years, they're going to need 10 gigawatts of power. Right now, Utah is an importer of power. We don't produce enough power to take care of our own needs, let alone the needs of the next 10 years. And so we as local counties, chambers of commerce, state of Utah, we need to be engaged to make sure that that the conversation isn't just about transitioning away from coal, that it's to be that we need to take care of our local needs. Joel and I and Kyle and Gary and others, our main job is to listen to local chamber of commerce, local business, local citizens, government, and try to help you to interface and interact with the federal government. And so if you have any issues in your local communities, that we could be of help, that's what our job is. And so please reach out. I believe that we can make it, and our job is to help make Utah better. And with that, if there's not any questions, or if there is, I could take those now. But that concludes what I had prepared.
Thank you, Kent. We appreciate you so much being here, taking the time out of your morning. But thank you for that information. I'm gonna email you just for a little summary, and then we can put that in our newsletter. But thank you again.
Hey, one final thought.
Yes.
Kyle, we miss you.
I miss you guys too, Ken.
Awesome. Okay, I'm so excited to introduce our presenter today. If you guys were at the RUCC conference, you met her. It's Megan McFall, and if you missed this is why I'm so excited for her to be here today. If you missed the EAG deadline, and you want to make sure you don't miss out on other opportunities, if you're just, I think with the grants, they get super overwhelming. So she is here to kind of help us know that grant season isn't just this little period. We kind of need to be looking for them all year long, and she's going to help us with some of those tools. So I will turn the time over to Megan McFall.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here today and talk about this subject because it's something that has had major impact in our area as far as southeastern Utah over the course of 4 years that I've been living down here. We've been able to bring in about $2 million worth of funding through grants to have a major impact in San Juan County, as well as the local Four Corners region. And so I got to get my chat and everything up here real quick. Sorry, I didn't want to share my screen too early. I have a really casual teaching style. So if you have questions as we go along, please feel like you can break in and ask as I'm talking. Or you can put it in the chat, but I generally will miss the chat because I'm talking and looking at the camera. So feel free to break in if you have any questions. One thing I want to add to what Kent was just saying is Senator Romney's office has been a huge support as we've gone through our grant processes down here in southeastern Utah for letters of support and things like that. You want to make sure you're keeping connected to your representatives, congressmen, your local leaders, things like that, because those letters of support are hugely important as you're submitting grants. So we're going to talk about partnerships today. And I'm going to talk about some of the things that we've done down here to hopefully give you some ideas and hopefully have you looking at grants in a different way. As was mentioned, my company's Ashtec. We actually started Ashtec back in February. Before that, I was with Utah State University. So some of the projects I'll talk about today were Utah State University, because I've been here for 4 years, and others have actually been Ashtec just since February. So on the agenda today, this is one class of 6 on our grant readiness series, if you want to call that. So Talia teaches 4 classes and I teach 2 classes, and then we also do a consultation in that series with any groups that wants to put a grant together, has some ideas, or might just need to flesh out the finishing pieces of those grants. So that's kind of how that series is set up. But the agenda goes today, we're going to introduce grant writing and partnerships. Talia last month introduced a lot of the grant writing, and so I've taken a lot of those pieces out. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. And then we're going to talk about the importance of the partnerships for your grant applications. We're going to identify potential partnerships in your area. So if you don't have a pen and paper, go ahead and pull those out. And then we're going to build and maintain, talk about building and maintaining partnerships. We're going to integrate your partnerships in the proposal, and then we're going to have, at the very, very end, I will have practical tools that you can use. So if you would like to be added to that share file, feel free to send me either an email or drop your email in the chat. Hopefully I can gather all those up before we finish. So So how can partnerships enhance your grant applications? A lot of people, when they go into funding, they look at applications the same way they look at a bank loan. You need money, and so you need to fund your operations. That's not the way the grants work. Bank loans are for individual groups. Grants focus on partnerships and development. And so by creating those partnerships and development, you have a big impact on the competitiveness of your grants. I'm going to give you an example of a grant that we have put together here in the Four Corners. We were recently awarded it back in June, and we're in the process of putting that together. And the power of the partnerships on this one is really, really important. We are actually, it was the USDA Rural Business Development Grant. That Rural Business Development Grant actually has usually about 5 awards here in Utah. They're about $50,000. When we submitted our application, we were actually kicked up to a set aside exclusively for tribal areas or tribal communities, and we were able to get 166,000. So to kind of give you an idea, make sure you're looking for your set asides and things like that and how to create the partnerships to qualify for those. We didn't even know that existed until this year when we got bumped up to it. So these are some of the partnerships that we were created that have been created through different grant opportunities. The biggest one being the one we're working on right now, which is the USDA Rural Development. As part of that grant, we were able to bring together in partnership 2 tribes, which is the Ute Mountain Utes as well as Navajo Nation, to make that happen. As part of that grant, we're also putting in 2 co-working space and business hubs on tribal lands, which has never been done before under this type of precincts. We're also bringing in about $50,000 worth of education and business development that is needed in this area. The Rural Business Development Grant is really exciting because it's a grant that you have a lot of flexibility in how you develop your grant applications. And so we were able to really develop this grant application to do custom training that's culturally relevant for each of the tribes, as well as serve San Juan and Grand counties under that same umbrella. And so it's created a really, really great centerpiece. As you can see in front of you, these are the partnerships that AshTech has currently created. There are different grants. For example, we submitted with Salt Lake Community College a Veterans Business Development Grant for farming and rural communities. We work with the Ute Mountain Tribe at the Education Center. We now have an office set up in there. So we've created these different opportunities so that we can come together and be more competitive. When you're thinking of your grant opportunities, think about the partnerships that you can bring on a federal, state, and local level so that you cross the gambit. And if you look over here, we have private sector as well as nonprofit, as well as government. And it can show you a little bit of what can be done for your grants. So let's talk a little bit more about identifying potential partners. Potential partners generally can be nonprofit organizations, which generally are the ones that are combining together to fill out applications. But what a lot of people don't know is you can actually bring in your government agencies from federal, state, and local in order to make your grant application more competitive. When you're looking at an application for grants, they like to see these partnerships because it looks like and it shows that you're utilizing existing programs that are already funded, and they're not funding stuff that's already in place. They're not reinventing the wheel, or you're not reinventing the wheel with your application. And so by bringing those different partnerships together, it makes you more competitive and sets you apart from others who maybe did not. And so developing a list of those that are in your area that qualify under the nonprofit, the government, educational institutions, as well as private sector is important. So as you have a grant application come in, you can go through and see what the requirements of that grant application is, and then figure out who your best strategic partners are. So as you're looking at your strategic partners, or you're identifying them, the criteria You want to set a criteria for selection for partnerships. It might be a minimum amount of time in business or a minimum level of expectation. They might already have a program in place that you can utilize and use that as a key element as part of the grant application to meet that need. And so you want to be very considerate of those things. But on that same note, our organizations and our chambers have a mission and a vision of what they want to accomplish. And so you want to make sure the organizations that you're working with also meet that expectation. So you are meeting the standards that you're looking for. Okay. There's lots of tools and resources in finding potential partners. There's databases and networks. There's industry networking events as well. The state of Utah is so great about having a very easy way to get online and search businesses in your area that are open and registered under the state of Utah, which makes it really, really nice to be able to kind of line some of that strategic alignment up with. And then you want to research the background on your potential partners. You don't want to just go into a partnership just to have an extra person on your list. You want to research the background, previous collaborations that they have done, their reputation. You also want to make sure that they're a grantable business. Some businesses, if they're not able to complete a grant, then they're no longer grantable, and they're paying that if you don't complete it properly, you have to pay that funds back. And while they're doing that and getting themselves back in good standing, they're not grantable. And so you want to be cautious of that too. I haven't found a database that shows those businesses yet. So you just want to get a little bit more background, maybe have an interview process so that you kind of get an idea of what they've done previously. Now, approaching potential partnerships. When you're you can craft a compelling proposal letter to them or have a meeting with them. Generally, what I do before I go into the proposal process is I sit down and I've identified grants or identified a program, not necessarily a grant, but a program I want to put together. And figured out their key roles that are going to be in that program before I go and talk to them or create a proposal for them. I generally do my proposals face-to-face, so we can have conversations. I can see body language, things like that, rather than just sending off emails. But I do know some organizations just send off emails. The other thing to think about is thinking about your outreach. You want to start your outreach now. As was mentioned earlier, there's grant seasons for different types of grants, but ultimately grants come out all year long. And as you're putting your partnerships together, you want to think about the issues in your communities and how you can have impact on it. Like for us, it was workforce development and business development specifically. We only have 50% of our residents have access to internet, and only about 50% of them also have access to a computer. And so those are the kind of things that we are trying to bridge that gap, and why we put together the co-working spaces and the business hubs. And so by doing that, and we knew that gap was there, we were able to strategically place those business hubs. For example, one of them is going to go into Monument Valley, the other one's going in White Mesa, and then we're in the process of constructing the Bear Center out in LaSalle. And so we have 3 operations that we were able to strategically place, because if you know anything about San Juan County, and most of our rural areas are exactly the same way, we cover a lot of ground, and there's a lot of distance between each of the little towns. And so we wanted to make sure we were able to create that hub within each of the communities. And so as we went into that, we thought about the best locations for each one of them. And those 3 towns are very rural, but they also can provide the biggest impact. So as you're going into these partnerships or these proposals, you want to be thinking about that. Not just how this business can serve the grant, but also maybe the outreach and connections within that community if they have not been served. Most federal agencies will have a list of communities that need to be served, and they're watching for those listed within your grant applications. And if you know those in advance, you're able to go through. Part of that is just getting to know the different granting agencies and things like that. But that can help create that strategic partnerships. So when you're doing your outreach, you can do it through email and phone. and in-person meetings. I like in-person meetings because you get so much more out of the conversations, as well as seeing what their organization really looks like and does. But you can do whatever best serves you, man. And then you want to build a rapport and establish that trust in advance before you come to them and ask for that partnership. If you have not had any connection with them before, it's very, very hard to create that partnership. It is also hard to figure out what the best ways to work with those different groups. Now, once you've selected your different partnerships that you want to go into, you want to work as a team to finish the grant application. You might have done a framework or an outline or know the needs, and maybe done a scope of work, but work with your partners to create a cohesive application, so that everybody's on the same page, everybody has read it, everybody's agreed to the different terms, the different reporting, all of those different things, so that nobody's going in blind. That's an important aspect of developing your grants, so that you have the buy-in from those partnerships in order to make sure that they're fully completed. And then last but not least, make sure that you do reviews on your grant applications and you get feedback on that. One of the hard parts about working within partnerships and having, a lot of times you'll assign out different areas. You're going to write this portion and you're going to write this portion. You're going to write this portion. We're going to bring it all together. By doing that, it's really choppy. And so they're written in different tones. And so what you want to do is when you bring those together, if that's the way you're developing it, you want to make sure that you have a review process that can even that out and develop the final application in one tone and essentially one voice. So it looks like it is a cohesive application process. So these are kind of the 4 steps that you go through in order to develop your partnerships. Now, I always talk about having grant ready businesses. We have a grant ready program that we put businesses through to create the logic models and the programs outlines and things like that. So then as we have grants come up, we're able to work on them immediately. We don't have to form those partnerships. We don't have to form any of the reporting details or anything like that, because we've got a logic model with a scope of work and a narrative, and we've already created the partnerships. Hey, if we find a grant that fits within this, can we create this partnership? All of those things are already in place, so that as soon as we see a grant application, we can go after it. The downside
Megan, really quick, can I interrupt?
Yes.
I really like that you've created this thing here, because in reality, excuse me, I think a lot of us do this in bits and pieces, but I don't think it's organized this way, right?
Yeah.
And I think I was sitting there looking at this going, okay, I think I do some of this, but I don't think I do all of it. And I think this fills in the missing gaps that we're missing. And so I really like this, and I like how it's organized out. So I appreciate you putting this together for us.
Thank you. I'm glad that it helps. One of the biggest problems that we have is when we find a grant application, we may only have a couple of weeks to complete it. And if anybody knows the grant writing process, you know that it's going to take more than 2 weeks to go through that. And so you might miss a grant opportunity. For example, the EAG grant that we were talking about earlier, it just got submitted this last month, and you might have missed it because you didn't have a project in place. You didn't have the partnerships established. Another really big one that a lot of people don't take into consideration is if it's a build out or a model or anything like that is going to be included with your grant. Our contractors right now in the state of Utah are super busy. I don't know about in your area, but in our area, we can't get a quote fast enough to apply for a grant under that, to apply in time if we start once we find the grant. And so what we've done is we've gone through, and any build out, any remodel, anything like that we want to do, we've already gone through and have quotes so that we have a good idea of what that is going to take, and to be able to write that in. That way we have a basis to start from. And we'll go and renew those if we don't have it funded within 1 year. We'll go and renew it because inflation is going to affect those costs. And our contractors are super great to work with, and I'm sure your contractors in your area are super great to work with to get a starting quote. And then when you go back to them and say, "Hey, we weren't able to get this one funded. Can you give me an updated quote so that if I find a grant, I can submit it with that?" A lot of those application processes, you're going to have those numbers, you're going to have quotes, and generally you're going to have 3 quotes to back up the reason why you're selecting on that one, just to follow procurement. It's another big thing you have to think about as you're going into partnerships. Think about the procurement process. Anything over $5,000 and above, you're going to have to RFP. You're going to have your 3 quotes. You're going to have that information. Now you can do that before, or you can do that after. I like to do it before because I like to know which partners I'm working with, and then submit the 3 quotes with the grant application as to why you're doing that. And then you've surpassed the RFP process, but you've also saved yourself a lot of time in getting, once you're awarded, in getting your application up or your project up and running. So those are some important things. Another important thing that you want to be thinking about is how you want to look at grants differently. You know the needs of your areas. You know what needs to be, what help is needed for businesses. You know what the workforce development in the area needs. You might know that your area needs housing. We have a big housing project we're working on right now and created partnerships throughout the state of Utah on that. So as we're going through that, be thinking about those needs in the area and how the chamber can impact that. On the back end of that, most grant applications will allow you to add employees and salaries and indirect costs and things like that will help you cover the other needs of the chamber, because you're going to have somebody to help coordinate that grant, but you're also going to have additional administrative costs like bookkeeping and reporting and things like that you want to take into consideration. And so as you're going through, be thinking about that. Also consider setting up, if you're going to do a lot of federal grants, consider setting up a federal indirect costs agreement or letter, so that you can, instead of breaking out your indirect costs or your costs individually, you can do a set percentage. For example, Utah State set percentage is 27.8%. And so I just knew that I had to take that off of the top of all of my budgets. I knew that that was going to go through the administration and the bookkeeping and my building rent and utilities and all of that. And it's just a set percentage. So you can set that up so that you're just operating off that set percentage, and you have a letter that you submit every time you do that. So those are just some things to think about as you're going through the process. You're going to want to also think about all the different impact areas that you can impact, and have a logic model for each one of those. So like, for example, down here, we have the business hubs that are actively in process. We also have a regional food system that's actively in phase 1. And we're moving that along in the different phases that we put that together. And we've put the infrastructure, I call it infrastructure. A lot of people, when they hear infrastructure, they're thinking about water and sewer and that kind of stuff. Infrastructure also for you is setting up the different elements needed in order to qualify for a grant. And so, like, for example, in March, USDA came out with a regional food system. It comes out every 3 years, and it's $1 million grant. The problem is we didn't have the full infrastructure in place to support that, to submit that grant. And so now we're going back. We know it's coming again in 3 years. And so we're going back and putting all of the infrastructure in place. We're made all the partnerships, all the basic needs for that in order to qualify for that $1 million grant, to be able to apply for that. And so be thinking about that. If you find a grant and you run out of time before you're able to submit that, you're going to want to keep a copy of it. Anytime you write a grant or anytime you find a grant, get the instructions for that grant. And then you can, throughout the next year, because a lot of grants that you'll see that you'll be working with are actual annual grants. And so through the next year, you can develop out that project, your partnerships, and then be ready to apply for it when it comes back around. So be thinking about that. Also, the other thing to think about is which season everything kind of comes out. So for example, in January, February, March, a lot of it is business development, because a lot of people will start a new business towards the first of the year. So a lot of those grants that are due in those areas are business development. May, June, July are more like veterans, mental health, those kind of grants, medical type grants as well, that are coming out in that section. August, September, October, we do a little bit more business development. We're starting a new fiscal year. And there's other infrastructure type grants. And then October, November, and December are generally like housing and workforce development and things like that. So that just kind of gives you a little bit of breakdown to think about. But as you go along and you start looking for grants, you'll figure out what time and what season a lot of the grants come out. And so you can be prepared the following year or the following time it comes out, because some grants are 12 months, some grants are like 3 years, some are 5 years. And so you'll be able to be prepared when it comes out again. So once you've built your partnerships, you want to make sure that you maintain your partnerships. And so building your strong partnerships, some key elements are that you want to have very clear communication and shared goals, as well as mutual respect. A lot of, like, for example, that shared goals and clear communication is something that you can set up within your grant application or as part of your MOU or partnership agreement within your grant. As part of like reporting and things like that, you can set that up as a standard. And like, for example, if you're going to get together and meet and have meetings, you can add that additional money into your grant budget, as long as you have room in your grant budget to cover travel and things like that, if you want to do it in person. But make sure you have those clear communication channels. You know exactly who you need to be talking to for the process of the grant, things like that. And keep that in mind. Next, you want to formalize your partnerships. Again, your MOUs or partnership agreements. I have templates for those. If you've never done one, it will be part of that shared drive. But a lot of the grants, especially the federal grants, are now requiring either a letter of commitment, an MOU, or a partnership agreement. And so putting those in place is important, but also putting those in place kind of covers you as well, because it puts that level of responsibility on the partnership. You want to make sure you lay out the roles and responsibilities for each partnership so that it's very, very clear, so nothing gets missed. And then you also want to think about the legal and ethical considerations as part, because you are developing an MOU. You want to make sure that you're keeping all of that above board. And then once you've made those partnerships as an ongoing thing, you want to maintain and strengthen those through regular communication and updates. Hey, this is where we're at. I call them shareholders. Once they're in a grant process, I call them shareholders. And so when my shareholders come together and we have a shareholders meeting, I'm obviously from the private work side, right? We have a quarterly shareholders meeting. We go through all the details. This is what the report's going to look like. This is where we're behind. How can we get that up? You create action plans, those kind of things. So those are going to be important as part of your process. You want to make sure that you have really good conflict resolution strategies, because they're going to come up with new partnerships as you're going through. People have different management styles. People have different ways of doing things. You want to make sure that you have those conflict resolution strategies set up. And then you want to evaluate your partnership effectiveness. Maybe you've done a project and it's taken a year. You want to evaluate that partnership effectiveness and making sure that you accomplish what you wanted to accomplish, but also making sure that it's a partnership that you want to continue forward with, or maybe it was a lot of work and a lot of stress to have that partnership. And so maybe it just ends at that 1 year mark or whatever the grant period was. So you want to make sure you do that. Okay, so integrating grant proposals. Again,
Hey, and Megan, just a heads up, you've got 2 more minutes.
Okay, so once you create those partnerships, you want to make sure that you're working together. Make sure that you have a way. Docs is a great way to create that, so that you can both be on or all be on that document and be able to create those clear strategies in your collaborative writing. And then again, making sure that you before you submit, go and make sure you unify and have a cohesive voice on your narrative. Okay, evaluating your grant policy, we talked about that a little bit already. You want to make sure that that grant partnership or that partnership in general is serving you both, and you're able to be effective within that. There's different ways to do that. There's there's strategic meetings and things like that. And each area and each group is going to be a little bit different on how they want to do that. But also you want to evaluate each grant that you've done and the effectiveness on that. Maybe the restraints of that grant were too much and it doesn't really serve your area. So you can focus on new opportunities elsewhere. Okay. I have a share file that has MOUs, it has assignments on doing out your partnerships or creating a list of your collaborations, things like that. If you would like that, feel free to email me and I will add you to that share drive and we'll get that out to you. But I'm done at that point. So it sounds like I'm out of time. But if you have any questions, feel free to email me your questions and we'll help you out.
Thank you so much. One thing we are really trying to do with our RUCC website is we will have a centralized hub where we can, we'll have common challenges, shared resources, and support and strategic strategies like this. And so we all don't have to be the experts. This is such amazing information. So we're going to work with people like Megan and Talia and people to gather up great information so you guys can just go to one place on our website and it's like, oh yeah, and just get resources. So thank you so much, Megan. You're awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And then I'm going to turn the time over to Colette to introduce our just a great resource we have and something we want to help somebody with.
I actually was not prepared, Tricia, and so I'll let you go ahead and introduce.
Okay.
Thank you.
Grace, I will have you introduce yourself and let us know. Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So thank you for inviting me today. I do have like 2 slides. I want to say, Megan, I will totally be following up with you. What an awesome presentation. Lots of great ideas. Just fantastic. So building on that, can I share my screen?
Yep, I've made you a co-host.
Okay. Okay. So building on that, about a year ago, the state legislature passed a bill called the Child Care Solutions and Workplace Productivity Plan, which is basically a child care landscape analysis. Many phases to it, which I'm going to show you on the next page. But if you look at this map, you can see in many of your rural areas, parents really don't have choices for childcare. So one of the things that I've done actually,
we come down to
one of the things I've done is work with the Department of Workforce Services to map all of the different types of childcare. There's home-based care, there's centers, there's Head Start, there's half-day and full-day preschool programs, there's license exempt programs. They're all different colors. When you do go to the map, you can zoom in. You can see not just counties, but you can see neighborhoods, for example. So I'll be writing about supply versus potential demand related to kids, particularly the young kids under 6 in working families. Let me go to the next slide. So basically, beyond what the potential need is, I probably talked to, I don't know, 50 or 60 different, I call them stakeholders. I think Megan called them something else, but they're shareholders maybe, but basically people in the community who either run programs or work with others who can help share what are some of the challenges, what's going well. There might be, an amazing program on the ground. In July, I held 12 focus groups. So 8 of them were with programs, center-based or home-based. What are your challenges? What thoughts do you have? What's working well? I have done some outreach to employers. I saw Chris McCormick earlier in one of the little squares. He's one of the people that I've talked to. But what do employers see? What affects recruitment and retention of employees? Because I think there's no one way to address childcare. I'm charged with reviewing what is, then drafting a report, making some recommendations. As part of that, I would really like your help I have a very short survey. It's less than 3 minutes. It's maybe 6 questions, and the first 3 have nothing to do with childcare. Like, what industry are you in? What's your NAICS code? How many employees do you have? You know, it could be sole proprietor, it could be fewer than 10, could be fewer than 20. You know, there are different brackets. What county are you in? And then there's a couple of questions about childcare. And some of that is what you see, but the other part of it is, what incentives might your business find interesting to help support access to childcare? Some of that might may be related to expanding supply. Some of that may be related to affordability. So it would be great if employers could click on the survey, and that way, when I go through all the responses, I can reflect the responses in the report. Okay, touching base with the employer community in urban areas, in rural areas, here's what they see, here's what they might be interested in. I think the legislature is interested in what public-private partnerships might be of interest to employers. So the way for me to gather that information, super quick survey, less than 3 minutes. The other things I'm doing, you can see, I'm looking at how much money does the state have for childcare? How did they spend it? What's left of all the extra federal childcare COVID money? I'll be starting writing a report in October with recommendations. So this is kind of a pulse, take on the survey. It's not going to be out in the field for 3 weeks, you know, with, you know, lots of time. Ultimately, I'm going to share the link with Trisha, and maybe she can help get it out. But if you guys could each help get it out, that would be a really great way to make sure I can capture those responses, you know, aggregate them, put them in the report. And hopefully the final report, well, not hopefully, the deliverables due December 1. So that'll be a report with recommendations. And then hopefully in January, the legislature will have conversations. My goal is not to write a report that's going to sit on the shelf and touch and check the box. My goal is to write a report with thoughtful recommendations, looking at what's going well, building on what is, pointing out gaps, looking around at other states and communities. What are some best practices? What are some innovative things? Megan's given me a couple of ideas, so I will follow up with Megan.
Yeah, Grace, if you can just drop that. Sorry, we're just trying to get everybody out of here at 10, but she will send me the link and we will get it in our newsletter. So if everybody can take that and fill it out and share it, that'll really help. That'll really help us. So I'm going to turn over the time to Chris real quick. We've got somebody who's going to, our advocacy is going to take 5 minutes. So go ahead, Chris.
Outstanding. Hey, so good to see everybody here and really appreciate you guys joining us on these calls. I don't want to waste any time because we're up against the clock, but I'd like to turn the time over to Ginger Chen, who works with the Salt Lake Chamber and does a lot of political advocacy on our behalf and is a tremendous resource. So Ginger, take it away.
Just out of curiosity, are you guys interested in hearing about Amendment D? Is this something that's top of mind for you all? Or okay, so I'm getting thumbs up because I don't want to bore you to tears if that's the case. And we only have just 5 minutes. So I'm going to be really quick. For a little bit of background information, the legislature pulled themselves into special session August 21st, so just a couple of weeks ago. And they wanted to get an initiative on the ballot stating that they had, well, let me go back in time for one quick second, because a lot of people may or may not know the history on this. But in 2018, there was a Proposition 4 that was placed on the ballots that created what is called an independent redistricting commission. So we knew that the state in 2020 is going to have a surge in or a growth, and so it would change our boundaries and our congressional districts. So this independent commission created boundaries, and the legislature accepted those maps and then basically threw the maps out and created their own. So that created a lawsuit, and the lawsuit was settled in July of 2024 with the Utah Supreme Court, where they said this is called gerrymandering, and they deemed that the legislature went against the will of the voters in creating those maps. So the legislature said, we're fearful that this is going to go beyond the maps, in that initiatives will be placed on ballots and citizens will have the opportunity to vote on ballots, and it'll create a section of what they're calling super laws. So what that means for everybody who maybe not been following this very closely, that a citizens initiative could get passed and it could have dramatic consequences for the state, fiscal consequences, because the legislature's job is to balance the budget. It could be outside influence coming in with big money, trying to get ballot initiatives on the ballot. So the legislature said, we're going to put an amendment on the ballot that would amend our constitution, which will allow us to make changes when citizens initiatives are put on ballots. That, by the way, was thrown out of court yesterday because they felt like the language that the legislature had put forward to be on the ballot in November was misleading. So you'll see this on the ballot, because I think ballots have already been printed, but those votes won't be counted. It's been a big controversy. We've talked about this a lot here at the Salt Lake Chamber, but just be aware that you may see this on the ballot, but that will not be counted because of the court hearing, or it was an injunction. That's kind of a long-winded way to explain that. I'm trying to make this quick. This week is interim session. So this upcoming week, the legislature will be pulling themselves into interim session. You're going to hear about nuclear energy, broadband. The broadband office is going to present their statewide connectivity plan. So you'll hear that. There will be a proposed dangerous weapons conversation, and the school safety task force is going to be talking. I think this is in light of that Georgia shooting. Something that may interest you all is Grand County will present an audit on tourism related taxes. So that obviously has some implications for our rural friends. And they're going to talk about station area plans in terms of low-income housing, or affordable housing rather. So those are a couple of things you'll hear from interim. That's it. I did 4 minutes really quick.
Are you still going to be hosting your meetings on Thursdays? I think it was, or
Yeah. And Abby, I had those Tuesdays at 4, I think is when I had those. And if that is beneficial, yes, I still will continue to do those.
I think they were great.
Yeah.
I think they were really great a lot of us learned a lot from them, and they were really important to our chamber members. And it was great to be able to connect with you and give us our opinions, about things that were affecting us locally. And that way, we can use you as our advocate. We don't have to go up there. And,
Sure.
I just really appreciate all you do for us. And I know you're an advocate for us. So we really appreciate you, Ginger. Thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. And if you ever have questions about any of these initiatives, please just reach out to me, call me, send me a text, an email. I love talking about these things. I talk about them nonstop. So feel free to reach out to me.
And Ginger, if we share our Rural Utah Chamber Coalition list with you, can you add those names to the calendar invite for those updates, for those legislative updates that you do?
Sure.
Great. Thank you, Ginger.
Okay, thank you everybody so much. We look forward to seeing you all at One Utah Summit, if you'll be there. And if you don't have a ticket and still need one, reach out to us. Thanks so much. Have a great Friday.